Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy, and we are here for another 6-5 Insider with Daniel Newman from Futurum Research. Daniel, how are you? I mean, we're dressed so angelic. There must be something awesome going on here.
Yeah, it's Texas summer, man. It's hot, and when it's hot, white is a little bit cooler. But no, I'm doing great. Always excited to be here with you on the pod, and I love the Insider series, Pat. And we've got one of those today. We've got a pretty important guest. Where if people are listening on the pod, not looking at the Chiron, and they may not know, but you're going to know in a minute.
Yeah. So there's a few companies out there that have done more for mobility than Qualcomm. They're in most of the smartphones that are out there today. They're evolving, a lot of growth areas outside of smartphone, but we are pleased to have with us Don McGuire, Qualcomm's SVP and newly appointed CMO. Don, how are you doing?
Hey guys, how are you?
Great. I mean, we're on the pod. I mean, I can't think of what I would rather be doing. I'm not kidding. That's not corporate speak. I love podding with Daniel and guests here. But you know, as you know, the 6-5 Insider, we take the industry's most influential folks in tech, and you are one of them. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. There's no place else I would rather be.
Aw. That's so nice. And you didn't get the memo about the white shirt, though.
I did not. It's a little cooler here in San Diego. Not by much, I'll say, but it is a little cooler here in San Diego today, so I opted for the navy blue.
I did hear that it's pretty warm down there, and that's very un-San Diego of it to be. I always imagined it as 75 and sunny every day. Just warm enough to get into the pool, but just cool enough to feel good when you get out. So we've got some great questions for you, and totally excited to run through them all with you, Don. Before we do that, though, just a quick chance. Obviously, we gave everybody your name, your title, your role, but how about just a quick introduction? You are not new to Qualcomm. You've been there a while, a lot going on. Love to just kind of get that quick backstory for everybody that's meeting you for the first time. Sure.
Just celebrating next month my 5-year anniversary here at Qualcomm. So it's been a really fun 5 years. I've enjoyed every minute of it, I have to say. And so it's been a really, really nice ride so far. I'm excited about my new charter. We'll talk about that, I guess, in a little bit. Background-wise, I've been on the semiconductor train for a little while between Qualcomm and my tenure at Intel. And prior to that, I've been all over the mobile ecosystem, from the operator side to the OEM side, even to the content and ecosystem side. So, been in tech marketing my entire career. I really enjoy it and excited about the future of where I'm at today.
Yeah, it's actually going to be a really interesting conversation. And you started to actually dive into that first question. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I'll just let him riff. Just let him go. He's got a sense of what I might ask him. I really appreciate you being here, Don. 5 years has to have flown by, but 30 days now in this role, it hasn't been very long at all. And we love getting you here, fresh in the role, probably seeing the world through, new lenses, eyes wide open, ready to go. Talk a little bit about that charter you mentioned. Talk a little bit about the opportunities that you really plan to focus on in your early days as Qualcomm CMO.
Sure. Not only is this a really interesting time for me to take on this new role, but it's a really interesting time for the company. Similarly timed, my ascension is similarly timed to Cristiano's ascension as our new CEO. I think they were like 10 days apart. He ascended on July 1st, and I ascended on July 10th. So it's a really interesting time for the company. Both from a leadership perspective as well as from a strategy perspective. And my charter primarily now is, as I get into this new role of Chief Marketing Officer for the company, is to help Cristiano and the rest of the organization, obviously, get the story out around this new vision and the strategic direction that Cristiano has laid out for the company for the next sort of phase in what is the Qualcomm story. And it's a story that we've been executing on for several years now, but it's a story that's still fairly new across different audiences and constituencies. So one of my biggest challenges and opportunities over the next several weeks, months, and years is to make sure that the key audiences understand our growth story, understand that Qualcomm is in no way and has really never been a one-trick pony. And there's not one product category, one industry, or one customer that defines us. So it's a really exciting challenge and opportunity. And I'm psyched to be able to tell it and work with the team here at Qualcomm to be able to, sort of shout it from the mountaintop, so to speak, and work with Cristiano in doing that.
Yeah, it was fun. On the 6.5 Summit, we got to talk to Cristiano, I think a few days after he got his scepter. Oh, no, actually, he hadn't received it officially yet. But we kind of tapped into kind of what kind of things he was looking at. And speaking of that, you've been at Qualcomm for 5 years, and it is amazing that you've been defined by mobility, but there's a lot more in the future of Qualcomm that we've talked to Cristiano about. We tune into your earnings and obviously all your product announcements and things like that. But can you talk about the company's growth, its diversification story, and its strategy?
Sure, absolutely. I'll kind of refer back to earnings because I think it was a real pivotal moment for both the financial analysts and investor community, whoever was listening to that call, in how we structured the call, what Cristiano and Akash spent most of the time talking about, the percentage of questions that came in from the analyst community that had nothing to do with the smartphone and nothing to do with our historic mobile business. So it was a really interesting kind of moment for us. And we've got business sectors and product categories that are generating over $1 billion in revenue. We announced that outside of the smartphone, our revenue is now on track for $10 billion, right? Which is not a small number. So the growth story, like I said earlier, it's been there for a while. We've been entering these categories. We've been building up relationships with customers. We've been building ecosystems, and we've been generating revenue, real revenue, in these product lines and across these industries for quite some time now. And so again, it was kind of like we packaged it all up and we started thinking about how we told the story a little bit differently, and we kind of flipped the story a little bit and said, hey, why don't we start off this earnings call talking about all these areas of growth first and foremost and put those up front. And then we'll end with our mobile business, which, most of the, as you said, most of these audience members and most audiences in general understand and know us for historically. But these other businesses and these other growth areas is really sort of the interesting kind of new. And that's what we did. I think it resonated really well. We got a lot of questions about it. It caused, I think, some new thinking around modeling our business and modeling us as a company and where we're headed, which I think was a great outcome from that storytelling exercise. So that was sort of a pivotal moment. And now we have a chance to build on that foundation as we move forward to the future and talking about our growth in automotive and talking about our growth across IoT and many, many different categories. Our growth in RFFE, where we'll be the #1 wireless RFFE provider in the world by the end of this year, which I think just 2 years ago, there was a lot of doubts on whether or not we could even get substantial share. So I think exciting stuff, great storytelling. When you have good news, it's really, really easy to tell the story. But there's some just really salient points that we made that I think resonated, and it really gave us a great platform to continue telling the story as we kind of move through the rest of the year into our next earnings cycle and beyond, into our New York Analyst Day, which is coming up in November, and then into 2022.
Yeah, isn't it funny how you actually put the numbers out there and people, I think it's got to be easier for you to tell that story now that you have actual numbers, right? That shows that not only are you basically the biggest mobile RFFE play out there, you're on a run rate for what now, $10 billion in automotive and IoT, which has a lot of different things in there. Is $1 billion. So these are very sizable businesses, and I believe over time, kind of reach and frequency, rinse and repeat, telling that story over and over. I make it sound easy. I'm not a CMO or a marketing person anymore, Don. So this stuff's all easy. I think you'll start getting more credit for that.
Yeah, and I think it's really taking every touch point that we have and maximizing it and really leveraging it to its fullest and not missing a beat with regards to the ability and to tell our story. We have lots of opportunities throughout the course of the year. Cristiano has a lot of speaking engagements. He has a lot of time with the press. Others within the organization are very publicly facing. We have a very, very large presence on social media. So there's lots of opportunities for us to tell the story. And my job is to make sure that we don't let any of those opportunities pass us by, and that we get the most out of them and we maximize and optimize that storytelling cadence across the board.
Yeah, I remember telling the story on Market Watch a few quarters before Cristiano was to take over. I wrote about kind of what investors don't seem to understand about Qualcomm. And I think you've alluded to it, Pat alluded to it. Everyone sort of wants to only focus on the one bucket, and that's mobile. Some savvier ones get the licensing business and how that sort of attaches. But again, still mobile, still mostly about attaching licensing to, devices. But this whole other, the adjacencies, I call it, the automotive, the RF front end, IoT business, I mean, these have grown up and in their own right have become companies that could stand on their own 2 feet. And that's the part I still think everyone's really kind of struggling. And so to Pat's point, in your new role, you have an opportunity to tell that story over and over and over again. And, those rules of 7, Don, are kind of true. And I don't know if it's 7, and in this attention era, it might be 700 times that we need to hear things before they seem to seep into our brains. So let's talk about that strengthening brand perception. I know Snapdragon's a passion for you. The company's made some really meaningful changes in its whole approach to its brand and brand perception. One of them, for instance, was taking Snapdragon and actually, separating the brand, the Snapdragon brand, from the Qualcomm brand. I'd love to get your story, since I know you were involved with it. What drove that change? Why was that necessary? And what's the strategic objective to make that a positive, of course, without diluting Qualcomm in any way in that process?
Great question. I'll start out by just talking about how we see sort of the two brands. Qualcomm, obviously, it's our company name. It is our corporate master brand, so to speak. And we are, as a company, our brand strategy is more of a branded house versus a house of brands. We're not PepsiCo or Coca-Cola. We don't have Sprite and Fresca and all these different brands that stand alone. And maybe you associate them together with the Coca-Cola company at some point, and then Coca-Cola has its flagship brand, which is Coke. Of course, we aren't structured that way. We don't have that many sort of product brands in our portfolio that we would want to invest in building with key audiences. But we do have this power product brand in Snapdragon. And what we learned through a bunch of research, both research with consumers around the world, talking to our customers and our partners around the ecosystem, is that Snapdragon in itself is a very strong brand. It has great affinity, it has a strong identity, it's a great logo, if I do say so myself. And actually, it has higher resonance with key consumer audiences like tech enthusiasts, more like early adopters and tech enthusiasts, than Qualcomm does. And attached together actually made it more confusing for consumers to sort of separate and understand the two. So we decided, from all that research and all that input that we got in from all these different constituencies, that the best idea was for us to separate the brands, turn and Snapdragon in the direction of becoming a power product brand, standalone power product brand. All the research that we've done backs up that we have permission to do that. And then keep Qualcomm as our corporate brand, as the brand that we use with ecosystems around the world, with government and regulators, as we use in some of our other product categories that are not as consumer facing, when we're talking about industrial or networking, things like that. Qualcomm is attached to our products our product names bear the Qualcomm master brand. But when it comes to our core mobile business and certain products that are attached to mobility and stand for premium mobile experiences, those all have the Snapdragon brand goodness around them. And that's what we're focusing on, how we are focusing on, rather, building up Snapdragon, continuing to grow it as a premier product brand that resonates with a certain group of consumers, primarily tech enthusiasts and early adopters, and some fast followers. And because we know that there's affinity there, we felt like we had permission, the door was open, let's jump through it, and let's do our best to grow this thing, because we thought there was a huge opportunity to drive value for the company with a strong Snapdragon brand, to protect our businesses and our margins, as well as the strong reputation of our technology and products, and to give our customers something to associate with that actually brings value to their overall value proposition. So for all those reasons, we're going direct with Snapdragon, super excited about it. We're doing a lot there. We can talk about that now, or we can get into that a little bit later. But I'm excited about this decision. I know Cristiano is as well. We're very much aligned on this. And so I'm looking forward to actually building up the capabilities of Snapdragon as a consumer brand, a consumer-facing brand moving forward.
Well, that is a great example of a do different. And I've had the pleasure of reporting to a few CEOs in my time, and whether it was the board or the executive team, it was all about what do difference, right? What are we going to be doing different? And you know, the Snapdragon Qualcomm thing is definitely a do different, but certainly 30 days in, you're not done yet, right? No. So what I'm curious is you know, you've been at the company for 5 years. You're right alongside CA. Gosh, Cristiano. I can't believe I called him CA, but sometimes I call him CA. But what other?
We call him CA too, so it's okay.
What other types of do difference are you considering, or maybe it's just a different way to look at things, different way to measure things, as opposed to marketing actions?
It's sort of all of the above, but I'll talk about some specifics. So beyond the standalone Snapdragon product brand and everything we're building around that, we can talk about the insider community. We just surpassed 3 million insiders a week ago. So
it's insane. Can I just stop you right there? And I that is insane. And I don't think people have enough understanding of, even outside of the US, to truly understand how powerful the Snapdragon brand is. And you know, I'm not saying it's weak in the US, but it's not as strong in the US as it is in, let's say, China, you know, Eastern Europe, or places like that. But that is incredible.
Holding up the phone of the future right here.
There you go.
See that? Snapdragon.
You're an insider. I love it. You know, Pat is exactly right. I mean, we have, like I said before, we have seen evidence of strong affinity for the brand, especially outside the US. And it's a combination of things. One, that we've invested historically in the Snapdragon brand from a full 360-degree marketing perspective in some of these regions and countries. And the second thing is, in these specific areas of the world, consumers actually care about the technology that's inside of their devices. They actually want to understand what's powering them. They want to know what's bringing them to life and making them work. Why do I have such great battery life? What makes my camera work, right? Why is my audio good or great or not so good? They want to understand that. And so when you look at regions like China and India and Southeast Asia and certain European countries, and the list goes on and on and on, there's an affinity for that technology story. And then attaching Snapdragon to that technology story, we've managed to build affinity and build presence for Snapdragon. The good news is we have great relationships with our customers. We have had ongoing dialogue with them about the fact that a strong Snapdragon brand is good for their business. It's good for them. It's good to build the association between the two, and it's good for their business as well as it's good for our business. And I think we've successfully done that to date. And we've been able to, again, strike a balance where we're building on our objectives, but not in lieu of or at the expense of their objectives. And that comes down to having very strong, very collaborative customer relationships where you actually have true partnership, and you're working on common objectives. So that's one thing that exists sort of in the rest of the world. In the US, there's not a large amount of awareness for Snapdragon. It hasn't been in the past.
Yeah.
We have not invested as much in the US as we have in other regions. That will change with the Insiders program and some other things that we're doing. But also, the US consumer, even early adopter tech enthusiast consumers, aren't as attached to that technology story as in other regions. They see the brand on the outside packaging of whatever it is they're using, and that's all they really want to know. And so building that technology attachment and building that story with an audience that does not necessarily have a natural affinity for that story is a lot more difficult, obviously. So, but we are seeing that shift as there's a diversification across the device categories, as we're seeing everything become smart and connected. It's not just about your phone being smart and connected anymore. It's about the devices around your home, around your workplace, in your car, right? All sorts of things are becoming smart and connected. We see an opportunity to tell that technology story now, and we feel like it's resonating with people because the light bulbs are starting to go off to say, well, I've got this car that does these things, but also my phone does these things, my watch does these things, and my thermostat does these things. What's making this all work, right? And so that's a natural question that people would ask. Oh, wow, it's magic, right? But there is a lot of technology and a lot of hard work behind that magic, and we're the company primarily that's making that all happen. Our technology is so pervasive, right, and so omnipresent across different product categories. We talked about a few of them earlier, that we can step in and build credibility and build the story around that. We can use Snapdragon as a beachhead where that makes sense, right, in the certain product categories that we talked about. But we also have a broader Qualcomm story we can tell, not necessarily to consumers, but to government regulators, to customers, to ecosystems, and to partners, which we'll continue to do as well. So even though the US has been a market where we haven't put as much emphasis in the past, we are going to continue to build Snapdragon globally through things like our Insiders program, as well as direct-to-consumer advertising and a 360-degree approach to marketing the brand. And we're also going to be doing some other things. So it's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to it. This is a company that historically has been all engineering all the time. And so for marketing to be able to sort of have a seat at the table and to actually be a business driver and actually show how we shift attitudes, we shift behavior, we drive pull-through, we drive preference, we drive consideration. We're full funnel has been fun for us to actually prove that out, but it's also been really fun to see the rest of the organization come around to become believers in that. And I'm just really lucky I've got a CEO that 100% believes. So it's a good place to start, and we're excited about the future. I got to tell you, Snapdragon Insiders to go to 3 million plus Insider fans in less than 6 months is phenomenal. Like when we put our numbers in front of Cristiano and I was pushing the team, we were pushing the team pretty hard. It wasn't even close to that. And so the response has been overwhelming. And if anybody knows anything about community, it's not just about acquisition, but it's about engagement. It's about ongoing engagement. What is the value you're creating for that audience, for that community member on an ongoing basis? So just because we got them doesn't mean we're going to keep them. And we've got to make sure that we're constantly engaging, that we're delivering things that are relevant and that are valuable to these members, whether it's about their technology suite, their product portfolio they have in their personal lives or their work life, or whether it's interesting technology stories and it's an educational thing, whatever that might be, kind of whatever floats their boat, so to speak. We have to continue that drumbeat on a constant basis. So we've got a baseline, always on level of content. We've got drops that we're doing on a pretty good cadence, quarterly, monthly cadence, where we're dropping in new, interesting ways for the community to engage. We just did a masterclass with a photographer all around how to maximize the use of your smartphone camera and how to take better pictures. Most people get a smartphone, they buy a smartphone because of camera, but most people don't yet know how to use like 80% of the features of their smartphone camera. So things like that are things that we're really leaning in on, and we're finding huge levels of engagement. So not only am I happy with acquisition, I'm very happy with the engagement numbers that we're seeing within the community. So again, really bullish on the future of the Insiders program. Another way, it's just one of the pillars that is the house of Snapdragon going forward. But excited to really build that around the world. We're going to launch in more countries in 22 and roll it out more globally. So stay tuned for that. That'll be fun. But that's really kind of where we're headed, and it makes it great to be the newly minted CMO when the trajectory, right, and the inertia is heading in that direction. I could think of maybe a lot of other directions that I might not be so excited about, but this is definitely one that I'm very excited about. So more to come in the future, but it's pretty cool.
So Don, first off, of all the things we've talked about, I feel like the last one's going to be the hardest for a Qualcomm to pull off, because it's not necessarily related to the top line revenue and getting money and doing that and making investments. But I got to tell you what, Daniel and I both were sitting there during, some, I don't want to be dramatic and call them near-death experiences, but some things that happened where, like, people don't understand how critical the company is, right? And the fact that you're doing real research, and not sure everybody does R&D, but you're one of the only companies remaining on the planet that does research for everything that we talked about. So, Don, we're coming to an end right now here, but I just want to thank you so much. This is the beginning, not the end. This is our first chat with you on the 6.5 Insider, and we hope you'll come back for a future episode.
I would love to. Anytime.
Excellent. Thanks, Don, and we're gonna wrap here.
Hey, you heard that, Pat? He said anytime. I'm thinking next week.
Next week, yeah.
Let's do a weekly. I hope his team is listening, because I mean, we take that at face value. But no, in serious, Pat, great deep dive, more than I expected. Went long on every answer and didn't hold back anything, which I hope all those people out there in our community that are listening are like, hey, we really got an inside skinny first 30 days. And serious though about bringing them back, in a year when, say, hey, I'd love to just rehash all of this, and still thinking the same, still feeling the same.
Yeah, and I worked. It was interesting. I worked with Don when he was at Intel, and I worked against Don when I was at AMD. So I feel like I've known Don for a long time. But I'm really excited for Qualcomm. I'm excited for Cristiano. I'm excited for Don to see those do difference, because now is the time to make changes. And it's not changes for change's sake. It's change. It's the change that gets real action. So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in here for another 6.5 Insider. We care about you. If you have any positive commentary, you can find me on Twitter. If you have any negative commentary, you can find Daniel out there on Twitter. But regardless, hit that subscribe button, regardless of where you are. We appreciate you, and have a great one.